When he tells us. Three, two. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. We hope you just enjoyed our March of the Women series, part two, 4 centuries of song in about 74 minutes. So that's a lot of songs in not a lot of minutes. We are happy to also say hello to our friends on Facebook Live and on YouTube. I'm Maria Sensi-Sellner. I'm the Artistic and General Director of Resonance Works Pittsburgh. And I'm so thrilled to be here with these fantastic women all around me, as you see, and talk to you a little bit more about this series and this program tonight. For those who have not watched it, we have a March of the Women series that's in 3 parts, and tonight we premiered part 2. And part 3 will premiere next week, but all of this programming is available on demand for you. You can go to resonanceworks.org and get a ticket and get access to our entire series, and we hope you will enjoy it at your leisure, wherever you would like to enjoy it. I'm pleased to introduce to you these 5 amazing women who, if you saw the performance, you saw their wonderful work this evening. To my right is Maria Dominique Lopez, who's coming to us from sunny California. We can all be very jealous, those of us in the Berg. And below her, she needs no introduction, Ms. Anna Singer.
Hello.
And we have Laura Lynn McGill, Charlene Canty, who you'll recognize to my left, and the person you don't recognize, that's because she didn't perform, but her music you heard this evening. Rachel J. Peters is the composer of Ethel Smythe Plays Golf in Limbo, which Anna performed so wonderfully earlier. I'd love to start with this because this whole series started with the notion that the centennial of the 19th Amendment gives us an opportunity to bring some attention to some women composers that maybe don't get heard very often, and that we can shine a light on their work and on the issues that women have faced in this industry for hundreds, literally hundreds of years. And when I think about this and we talk about the women getting the vote and the suffragette movement, of course we think of Ethel Smythe. She is the suffragette composer. Rachel, I'm really curious, how did you end up writing a piece about Ethel Smythe?
Well, I was asked to write something as a gift for my friends who comprise the Albatross Duo. So that's the pianist Adam Marks and the mezzo-soprano Jennifer Beatty. And they were doing a themed concert, which was all work by women, and they were specifically looking at stories about women reflecting on their art or other people's art by women. And they suggested a few names to me of historical figures to look at. But I had recently been to the Brooklyn Museum, where there's this very famous exhibit called The Dinner Party by Judy Chicago. And Ethel Smythe is one of the place settings at the dinner party. And so I had never learned anything about her while I was studying, but it sort of burned a hole in my brain. And I said, I really need to read up on her. And obviously, there's no shortage of literature about her or by her. She was a very prolific author about her own life. And because of the time frame, I had to read an abridged version of her many, many memoirs. And in doing so, it just seemed like such the perfect fit. There was so much about her experience that really resonated with me, to early conversations that she had with her family about wanting to be a musician, to what she encountered in academia and later in life as a professional composer. There's obviously so much that's still unresolved, so to speak.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that resonates with any woman in the arts is
Mm-hmm.
there are things that 100 years ago are still issues that we face.
Mm-hmm.
Let's pull this over to Anna. Anna, in portraying Dame Ethel Smythe, talk to us a little bit about that, about learning this piece, about your you're so wonderful at so many characters. A lot of people have seen you do the Bon Appetit as Julia Child. How is this experience for you?
Oh, it was a great experience. Being a music programmer at WQED, I was familiar with Ethel Smythe and her music. So it was just great to get involved with her a little bit more. And I love the fact that she was a golfer and uh, reveled in that and just did all the things that she was doing like a strong person as opposed to being a man or a woman. And Rachel, I have to say, your music has stayed with me in my brain. I have got the music totally in my brain all the time, and it was a challenge at first to learn, but then really, I felt that the music led the character, and the character came through with the words and the music. It was great. It was a lot of fun to learn. I look forward to going further into it and having an opportunity to perform it live in front of people.
Yeah, here's hoping. I would love that
Yeah.
so much, obviously. You do it so well.
Oh, thank you, thank you. She was a great character, and every time I went through it, something else just showed its uh, face, and her being started becoming very real to me. So I enjoyed it, and the costume was a lot of fun because actually my husband helped me put it together, and it was a white shirt of his and a vest that I had, but it was my father's beautiful skinny tie, silk tie that had a tiny little chipmunk on it, and
Oh,
the little hat that my husband had too. And it's just like, oh my gosh, this just gives me so much to go forward with and to work from. So it was great. It's fun.
well, you couldn't hear it all the way here in New York, but I was cheering very loudly at the end, and I texted Maria that I had been cheering very loudly.
Yay! Thank you, thank you.
I can verify that. Yes. Well, this piece kind of really sunk in for me too in a really quick way. We were talking about this before we went on the air. I was listening on a long drive to some back episodes of the Indie Opera podcast, and there was an episode where Rachel was on to talk about a different piece, but they played an excerpt of this one, and I just thought it was awesome. And I said on that drive, I'm like, that's something we should do. And it wasn't long after that I was like, Anna Singer could play Ethel Smythe. Absolutely.
Yay!
It took us a little while to get here, and it wasn't exactly how we had planned it. This would have been on our program in April, but live in person. But hopefully that will happen. That will happen again soon. So Rachel, in researching this piece, I'm sure you learned an awful lot, as you said very quickly about her. You said something to me earlier about her golf club.
Well, this is a funny thing. So I guess she had maybe infiltrated a few different golfing facilities in her day, but there was one in Woking in the UK that she frequented. And this is such a strange thing. The internet is such a weird place, but this Ethel Smythe scholar in the UK, I guess, Googled her and contemporary representations of her in new music and new art, and found me. And so he contacted me, and there's a tiny blurb about me in some presentation that he eventually did. But after the fact, he emailed me and he said, hey, I have the contact information for the Woking Golf Club, and I'm going to tell them about this. So yes, they have access to the video that Adam and Jen made subsequent to the world premiere of the piece. I never heard from them, so I don't know if they ever saw it, but they certainly do have access to it. So that's a fun little connection that I never would have anticipated.
So now you're forever tied to Ethel Smythe, right?
I mean,
it's on the internet, so it's forever,
yeah.
right?
I couldn't be happier. It's funny because when there are news articles about her, or the John Singer Sargent exhibit recently happened here at the Morgan Library, friends who went to it would take pictures of her portrait on the wall and text it to me, and like people associate me with her, which I think is kind of hilarious because we're not actually all that similar. But I couldn't be prouder. I mean, what a great accomplishment.
That's fantastic. Well,
yeah.
It was Dame Ethel kicked off this whole evening for us, but really we looked really not quite as far back as we could have gone. We could have gone a little further back, but back to the 17th century through the 20th century, and a look at all of these wonderful women composers, some that I was familiar with, some that I wasn't familiar with, but I was passionate as I learned about them, about including them, because these are stories of women who you don't know that you should know. And that was really important to me. Helen Huang was not able to be with us this evening. Her contributions to this series are spread out between all three parts, and she will be with us next week. But she and I had a conversation. She actually had a wish list of, she had a program of all music by women, and another one of all music that used poetry by women. And actually, one of the pieces, it was her idea, the Barbara Strozzi piece, which I just love that we started with. She had suggested one of the other Suleika settings in her poetry program, and then I discovered that Fanny Mendelssohn had written actually not one but two settings of that poem, and she was so excited about that. So that was even a new work for a composer that we feel like we know something about. But I'd love to talk to Laura a bit. When we were talking about the first iteration of this program, back when it was going to be live and an evening on our chamber music series, I knew Laura had done a program of all Clara Schumann, and you, as Rachel is now somehow intricately tied with Ethel Smythe, you seem to be tied with Clara Schumann. How did that happen?
I learned about her from my friends, Dr. David Smith and Marie Leibel Smith. They are, Dr. David Smith is like a Clara Schumann expert, and I feel like I owe him the passion and knowledge that I have acquired. But I also, just the more I learned about her in, you learn about it a little bit in school and grad school, but then I was digging and then talking to Dr. Smith, and I realized, like I said in the intro, she wore all of these hats and was fantastic at everything. And I'm a new mother, so I'm just like, how did you do it? But I fell in love with how complicated her music is emotionally. And I don't play piano like Karen. She makes it sound easy, but I know it's not easy, as Clara was a concert pianist. So I guess that's how I guess she's my muse. I talked about her being a muse to others, but I find her very inspiring. So maybe that's why we're intertwined now.
Well, that's not a bad thing. She's somebody that again, like Fanny Mendelssohn, that we feel like we know as musicians, but really, I feel like I only knew a surface level amount, and not nearly as much as you know about Robert Schumann or about any of the more well-known male composers. So that was that was interesting. So Maria, when we talked about this, you and I had a conversation about a lot of these different women after I had done some of this research and some of the folks that we wanted to include. And Pauline Viardot was somebody that you were like, oh, that actually sounds interesting to me, as I recall, because you were not familiar with her before, as I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I had heard the name, but the education that I received in music conservatory was very similar to the education we all received in music conservatory, which, you learn about Fanny Mendelssohn and Clara Schumann, and that's it. Those are the female composers. That's it, right? That's that line in your piece, Rachel, about name 5 female composers. Just waits. That's was my education. So. I think, what I think draws me to composers is actually their pieces, their style, their voice, more so than their stories or necessarily their body of work as a whole, or their advocacy or anything like that. So for me, I listened to a bunch of the pieces you sent me, and the ones that spoke to me were the ones that I'm doing, and that's kind of the way that I manage myself as a singer anyway, generally speaking. I mean, so often we're paid to sing a part, and that's what we do, and we do the job and we do it well. But when I get to be given some autonomy, which is super exciting as a singer, I really like to choose the pieces that really speak to me. And I just thought Pauline's piece was so playful. I loved the music. I love the Spanish influence. The poetry is saucy and sarcastic, and it was great. The whole thing. It was charming. I fell in love with it right away.
Well, I find her to be very interesting because she's not on that. If people can name five, she's not in that five usually. But she has written some operas that small operas that get done. There have been some efforts recently to reassemble some pieces of hers and record them. There's a wonderful piece for violin and piano, which I had talked to one of our violinists about, and she might still do it on our recital series, the Six Morceaux. They're just gorgeous, and she's like, why didn't I know these pieces, and it's a good question, and we want them to be heard. And I think here we are making our best effort to show our audience the great work of these amazing women. Charlene, we had sort of a similar conversation, and I feel like we talked about things, and you kind of found songs that really resonated for you. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, a lot. When we first, started discussing this, and you were, throwing out names of different composers, and then I was like, why don't I know this? Why don't I know this woman? Why don't I know any of their work? And so that really lit a fire under me to, try and research and find out more about these different pieces that they've done, and their lives and what they went through, and to be able to even have just a portion of their work heard. A lot of the things that I as I was reading through, I was like, I can't believe how much a lot of them just seem to be suppressed or held back because at that time, or when they were alive, women had a certain place and they were only expected to do, certain things. So, if you wanted to be a composer, what, are you crazy? That was the mentality of the time. So, I was really excited when you were like, okay, look, just go and, listen to some stuff and see what, if anything, that you would like to do. So some of the pieces that you come up with, I'm like, okay, I have not done that one. That's gorgeous. Let me see. So it was really hard to try and narrow it down to, only, 4. So, just like with everyone else, as you mentioned, I basically try and go by just what resonates with me when I'm, looking at pieces that I might want to do. So the 4 that I chose to do, all spoke to me in one way or another. So I was really happy that we were able to bring this all together and just give everyone an opportunity to hear this music that you don't get to hear normally. So hopefully we can do more things like this in the future in general, so that it doesn't become such or it doesn't feel like it's such something new when you have a concert of women composers. It should be normal. So we shouldn't have to say that we're featuring women composers. We should be programming them all the time. So very happy that's what you took this opportunity to do that. So thank you, Maria. Thank you.
Well, and you said exactly what is always in my heart about that we want to make it normal, right? We don't want to, and I had some mixed feelings about this series because a year ago we made a public commitment that at least half of the repertoire we will perform in a season will be by female creators. And that was never supposed to be, here's a concert of all music by women and we put it in this little box and it goes over here and then here's the rest of our season. That's not how we want to work, and that's not how we want the industry to be. That's not how we want the world of classical music appreciators to be. We want folks to hear more than what the narrow window that we tend to hear, as Maria said, we learn in school. But I think this gave us an opportunity. As I said, this was supposed to be one evening of our chamber music series in April. It would have been lovely. We would have been Bar Marco. We've had a nice cocktail. You know, Anna playing golf in the upstairs of Bar Marco would have been awesome. And when we talked about reinventing our season for our current situation, we hope we'll get back to most, or if not all, of the things that we've had to postpone. But this was something that really I felt strongly about. And we talked about how to package it in a different way, that a program could be over a course of multiple weeks. And, there's no lack of music. The other thing, Charlene, that you said, that you notice this is the longest program on this series. And I wanted to touch as many composers' works as possible, because there's no shortage. That's sort of a myth too, that there's a shortage, or that a program of all music by women will somehow not be equivalent. I think anybody who listened to these gorgeous songs tonight, there was nothing lacking at all. It would, I love all of these pieces. The biggest issue I had was figuring out what not to include. And we could do another one of these tomorrow easily. I was so happy, Charlene, that you sang the piece by Alma Mahler. Her songs are just so dramatic, emotional. They have lots of layers, and her story is really something, right? I mean, she was in contact with all the creative men of in her city, at her time. And I did not know what I said in the little introduction, which some of you here on the panel didn't hear, maybe if you weren't watching because we were prepping to do this. I quoted the letter that Gustav wrote her before they got married, which said, there cannot be a marriage between two composers. You have to think of my music as your music, and you have to be what I need. And reading that in 2020, right, really hits you in a certain place. And when he finally took the time to look at her songs, she was like, well, I haven't done anything for 10 years. How do you, that's 10 years of development. And Charlene, what you were talking about Florence Price, about how, what if they hadn't had these barriers? What music could we have had? And I think that's a great question. Laura, you had a piece. You had two pieces that you weren't familiar with the composers before. Can you talk about them a little bit?
Absolutely. The Anna Amalia, and the Rebecca Clark. I felt embarrassed that I hadn't heard of these women, but like Maria was saying, we get good educations and we learn about all the wonderful music that men have written, and there is wonderful music written by men, but there is so much great music by women I don't know why I was so shocked to be like, oh, right, Mozart didn't own the classical period. Like, women were, other people were writing too, but like women were writing art songs. And it was fun to sing that text, but thinking of it sent by a woman, because it says you'll find a girl and, you'll be happy and you'll find a friend. And I was just thinking of like, oh yeah, like we join hands with other women and we get stronger instead of, competing or tearing each other down. So I love that part of that song. And then the Rebecca Clark, I just gushed over because I was like, oh my gosh, it's just so beautiful. I can't wait to dig into more of her music. And thank you for sharing all of this. I learned so much. I love this program. There's actually, and all these beautiful voices that I got to hear sing it. All these, just working with women, singing music by women. Yeah, it was very powerful. So thanks, and I'm excited to dig in more.
Well, and it can feel normal, right? It's
Right.
amazing because it can feel like it can feel normal. Rebecca Clark. This was actually not the first time Resonance Works has done a piece by Rebecca Clark. We go back a couple of years. She was a violist. She was an orchestral musician. She was British and American, and so like the end of her life, she lived in New York. And so she's actually really well known in the viola community. Violists really know Rebecca Clark. Jason Hone, one of our violists from way, way back, did a piece of hers called I Bid My Heart Be Still. And it is as beautiful as you would think, having heard The Claws of Heaven tonight. So dig into some Rebecca Clark. I haven't found any I don't like. It's good stuff for sure.
Great, absolutely.
Yeah. And you brought up a good point. As I said, I didn't know Anna Amalia. She's not well known. She didn't write a lot of music because she didn't have the capacity to do that. But her contributions were actually even in a different channel. The music library that she spearheaded in Weimar. That was, she's the reason maybe we have some of the Bach collection that exists in the world today, which is kind of an amazing. A real amazing thing. Rachel, I don't know how much of the program you saw, but were any of these composers that were new to you?
I did not know Anna Amalia. That was new to me. I think all of the other names I was at least familiar with and had heard one or two of the pieces. I'm happy to see that Florence Price is having a moment again. That's lovely. More of that, please. So yeah, I'm very glad to see that these names are coming up more and more in conversations. And I follow a lot of musicologists and music historians and music educators on social media, and so more people are getting familiar with these names, and that's a very heartening thing to see.
Absolutely. Charlene, talk a little bit about Florence Price. You gave such an eloquent introduction in the program, but you obviously have learned a lot about her as a person and her development as a musician. And I wonder if you can just talk a little bit more about that and the piece of Florence Price that you sang, you brought to me actually, right? We had a conversation. Yeah. You're like, here's this Florence Price piece that I really love that I would like to do.
Yeah, so it was the Hold Fast to Dreams. And as I had said in the intro, with the way things are now in society and just in general with everything we've all been going through with this whole pandemic and everything, like it's, so easy to get discouraged and frustrated in lack of, opportunities and things like that we're all dealing with. So that was one of the reasons why that song resonated with me just through the text, and then listening to the music, just that was the topper. But yeah, when I was researching her, I was just like amazed by everything that she was able to accomplish at such a young age. I mean, I had mentioned in the intro, she was age 4 and given her first piano recital. Age 11, she had her first composition published. She graduated from high school as valedictorian at the age of 14. A couple years later, she already finished 2 degrees at was it North oh gosh, I just forgot the name of the university. Anyway, yeah, so for her to be able to do all of that at the time was amazing in itself. But just the fact that, with her background, I mean, it just seemed like, from what I had said, how much more would she have been able to accomplish if she didn't have to deal with the barriers of, one, being a woman, and 2, with her race, at the time frame, trying to fight against, oppression, inequality, etc. So it was just really enlightening what things that I found out about her life. So I'm hoping that, to be able to do some more things, at another recital that coming up next year. So it would be great to just focus on all of her music. I mean, for I think that she was really the mother of a mentor to a lot of African American composers and women composers that came after her. I believe that she had a close relationship with Margaret Bonds. Also, there was a couple other people that she mentored and helped develop, you know, as composers and singers and things like that. I know she composed more than one piece for, I'm having a mind.
It's okay.
Oh my goodness, I cannot remember her name. But anyway, I mean,
Yeah.
just amazing what she was able to accomplish. So, you know, I'm excited to find out more or, you know, discover more about her music and things like that in the future.
Absolutely. We do have a question that came in on our ticket holders page and the chat, and this is for Rachel. How did you come up with the premise for the Ethel Smythe piece?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, as I said, I read a lot about her life, and I don't know a lot about golf, but I know that it was a big part of her life. And I had read that she would sneak into men's golf clubs, you know, to play golf, and she wasn't supposed to be there. And that felt like a very apt metaphor for having a composing career, trying to break through in a male-dominated field.
Absolutely. Well, Anna does play golf, right? I asked you, and you're like, yes, I
Really?
do. So
Yes, I played golf yesterday, as a matter of fact.
That's why it looks so authentic.
But the thing about golf is that women are still not accepted on the course. If you want to play on the weekend, you have to play at certain times because the men take over the courses still.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still male dominated on the golf course.
Yeah. Also, I think my mom for a period of time had worked for the LPGA like many years ago, not as an athlete, but in an administrative capacity. And so that was something that was in my consciousness. And I thought, oh my gosh, you know, if that had been around and Ethel had been able to join, that would have been hilarious and wonderful.
absolutely. Yeah. I guess I didn't really know that. I think both Marias were not or shocked by that because I don't play golf, so I didn't realize that. Goodness, we have a long way to go in some ways, including golf equity. Let's start there.
Yeah.
Fight the battles we can fight, right? Anna, you program so much music every single day. I'm curious about about some of the women composers that you've discovered in your work in radio programming. Maybe some of these that we heard tonight, or some others that are lesser known that you think deserve some greater attention.
Oh, I mean, I'm astonished at how much music there is, and that I learn music by both male and female composers. Probably a new piece is discovered every day. It just kind of blows my mind. There's a new Florence Price Naxos label that features her first and fourth symphony. And I believe the fourth symphony was just locked up in an attic somewhere for years and years and years. And it was just found and produced brilliantly. We just keep on trying to find these things and make it possible. The fact that there haven't been any female composers performed at the Met, except for two, and there's a lot of music out there. It should be happening, and hopefully we'll get more and more of the female voice in there, active and alive.
Absolutely. And I think that, you know, last year when we made this commitment, I said it takes some effort, but only a little. You know, you just have, I think we have to be purposeful about it. And what I often hear from colleagues and people in the industry is, you know, well, we don't really care if the music was written by a man or a woman. We just want to perform good music. But that supports the status quo. And that doesn't mean, you know, all of this wonderful music that has not gotten attention, that's not going to get it attention, and that a lot of it really deserves. So I think it takes some effort, but a little bit. Say again.
That implies when they say something like, we just want good music, that implies that the music that they're already doing, which is completely male dominated, is the only good music, which is a complete farce.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, and there's still the separation of Black History Month, which is February, and Women's History Month, which is March. And, we make a focus on that, but at the same time, it shouldn't be. It should be every month,
Mhm.
every day,
All the months. All,
all the months.
all the months that end in all the letters, right? I was gonna say. But yeah, so I mean, we are making strides in that direction, and we're excited to. Well, let's talk a little bit about what's coming up next week. Part 3 of the series is Voices of Today, and it wasn't entirely on purpose, but all of the pieces were written in the last 5 years. Part of this. Or one of the repertoire ideas for this came out of the fact that we did have to postpone our performances of Jorge Sosa and Cerise Jacobs' opera I'm a Dreamer Who No Longer Dreams, which we were looking forward to. Ours would be and I think nobody else is performing right now either, so we're still potentially going to be the second production of this amazing opera, which I had the privilege of conducting the premiere of in Boston last fall. And it's a story about 2 immigrant women, and again, it's a story about women, some really strong women, and Cerise and Jorge wrote so personally and authentically from their experience. The audience response to the Boston premiere was really exceptional, and it shines a light on not just an issue, but on the stories of people and how we get to where we are, what the difference between different people who come to this country for basically the same reasons. So because that was postponed, I had an idea. There was a song commissioning program that was adjacent to the premiere. We plan to do another round of that, which is to commission a set of songs from composers and writers who have a connection to the immigrant experience in any way. There were 10 songs that were commissioned in Boston, and they were performed on a series of community concerts in the month leading up to the opera premiere. And it just so happens that a whole lot of those songs were written by some great, mostly young women composers, and we've selected 4 of them. And Maria was to have been in that production, and Helen Huang, who you heard this evening, was to be in that production. And so the 2 of them are going to each perform 2 of these immigrant songs from this program that was called Sing Out Strong Immigrant Voices. The texts were submitted from young people and older people from all walks of life. Some were writers, some were not. Some wrote just very basically and authentically about their experience of being an immigrant in the US, in Boston in particular. A couple of the songs we're doing are about either how difficult it is to learn English, or being in a place where you don't understand the language, which is really, and they've been portrayed really interestingly in the music of these songs. So that's one of the pieces of this. And for this, tonight you saw exclusively singers and pianists that got to perform in the same space together, socially distanced, but more or less that was the case. Last week, in part 1, our performance of Julia Perry's Step Up Mater was asynchronously performed with the strings in Pittsburgh and our soloists in New York. Maria, you're preparing these immigrant songs right now in an asynchronous way, which means that last week, Karen and the wonderful cellist Katya Jempoladian recorded the cello and piano parts for them, and now you're working on recording the vocal line. How is that in a process to do for everybody out there?
How honest am I being here?
Well,
it's definitely not without its challenges. I think honestly, you and I discussed this a little bit. I think probably after this asynchronous project, this may be my very last one. Just the act of making music in person, there's something that's so personal about that and so moving about that, and there's something about exchanging energy with other musicians in a room that it makes a piece so much more musical than to do it in this way. So that's probably my hardest challenge with making music in this asynchronous way, is trying to feed off of energy that's just not there. And so then I, as a performer, it's always my job to emote and to create that energy myself. And I'm happy to do that. But at the same time, yeah, it's just, it's just as difficult as it is to give a performance that's live streamed when you know that there's nobody in the audience. No, there are no bodies in front of you to share that energy with, which is hard. But aside from that, the technical aspects of being someone who has proudly not owned a computer in 10 years and literally only lives off of her phone, I have had to borrow and beg from so many people to be able to do this project and just get it done. And then the learning curve is just extremely steep for me because I haven't owned a computer in a decade. But otherwise, I mean, it's, the music is it's just so effing cool. It's just such cool music. When I received the pieces, I remember taking a listen through just the MIDI tracks, and I've had conversations with musician friends in previous years. One in particular who's a fabulous mezzo-soprano, and she's an expert in new music. Her name is Amna Iqbal, and she lives in New York. But she and I were having a conversation a couple years ago about new music. And I was like, I hate new music. It's intentionally obtuse. I'm never going to sing it, blah, 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 blah. And then I have had, literally right after I said that, I got hired for my first new music gig. And I fell so deeply in love with the piece. And I was like, yeah, but this is a one-off. I'm never really going to like new music. This was an accident. And then I just kept getting hired for these incredible new projects. And the music is so great. And the stories are so relevant and relatable. And I mean, these two pieces that I'm singing for this third part of our March of the Women, they're just, a spoonful of hate. I can't wait to sing it for you guys. It is dark and awful and so hard and so real and raw, and that's what music should be. So it's got its ups and downs, the asynchronous thing.
Well, of course, and that is a big challenge with all of this, because the only people in the room with, Anna's looking forward to playing Ethel in front of people that are more than me and the recording engineer. That's it. We enjoyed ourselves, but it's a thing. Yeah. But so the great punchline of Maria's story here is that the one world premiere next week is the one that Maria wrote the text for, right? And had commissioned. So when we talked about this series and this program, she says, I have this song that's being written for me, and could we do it on this series? And so coming from the person who thought they would never like new music to where you've come now, that's a big journey.
I know. New ideas that I have for lyrics to write for songs or libretti to write for operas. And I'm constantly thinking now in this way that I never really would have ever thought of before. And it's funny because I should have seen it coming. I wrote poetry and monologues my entire life. I've always written this stuff, but I never intended to have it made into a song. And then the COVID dance hit me like a bolt of lightning. And I was like, this needs to be an art song, and it needs to be one right now while it's still relevant.
So, and it is called the COVID dance. Do you want to give anything more away about it since you've gone that far?
Essentially, it's, I'm sure every single woman on this panel right now can totally relate and attest to the idea of losing space in a pandemic. We so often are the people who move out of the way to make physical space, actual space for men. I started playing this game. I heard about it on the internet and I thought it was genius. And I started playing this game before quarantine, where I would, walk down the street and I wouldn't move for men, or I would walk.
Chicken.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I literally did run into men sometimes. Mm-hmm. They would be just completely dumbfounded by the fact that I hadn't moved out of their way. Mm-hmm. And so for me to now be in a place where we're supposed to be socially distancing from one another 6 feet, and oftentimes my 6 foot bubble is invaded I would say probably 99% of the time it's invaded by men, not by women, because they are so not used to being aware of the people in their surroundings. They're so used to taking up space unapologetically that now in the times of COVID, when they can't do that anymore, I find myself retreating further and further back in the space that I had learned to take up for myself as a woman, because if I don't, I could catch COVID. So like, oh, it feels like 2 steps back, which is unfortunate. And so that's what this piece is about.
And I caught it. I have privy to the video, so it's not, yeah. Let's just say she acts and choreographs this very, very effectively. So we have, in addition to part 3 coming up, we have an amazing other project coming up. If you've been keeping up with us, Resonance Works is a part of the new Decameron Opera Coalition, which we are gearing up. In addition to preparing these programs, I'm producing, with my other hat on, our chapter for the Tales from a Safe Distance, and Rachel is actually the composer for one of the other chapters of that. And I wanted, since you're here and we're both involved in that, we can talk about different sides of that as well. And we have also commissioned a woman, Gilda Lyons, to write our chapter, and you'll actually hear another piece by Gilda. There was one song last week, and there will be one more next week. She's no stranger to Pittsburgh audiences because her opera, New Kind of Fallout, which Laura was the lead in however many years ago that was. I don't remember.
Too many.
We
don't have to talk about how long it was.
It's okay.
How long ago.
It's okay. But,
it was new once.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you who do not know what we're talking about, 9 American opera companies have partnered together to create an opera that has multiple chapters, like Boccaccio's Decameron, which is the story of 10 people who are quarantined together in a villa outside Florence. In our contemporary setting of this, it's a group of friends who once met in Florence, who get together on a reunion happy hour on a Zoom call, just like this one. And each of them tells a story to the group, and each story is a mini opera, a 10-minute opera that's been commissioned and produced by one of our partner companies. And Rachel has written the opera for our friends at Lyric Opera of the North in Duluth, Minnesota, with Sarah Lawrence, who was with us almost from day one of this project. Rachel, can you talk a little bit about I told Sarah the other day, I think I talk about your chapter almost as much as my own, because I find it so interesting and funny and also intriguing at the same time. So tell us about it.
Well, I should say that I'm not writing it alone. I'm part of a team. The librettists on the project are Margie Preuss and Jean Stramak, who have worked with Loon many times. So I was definitely, they sort of brought me into the family remotely, from my couch in New York, and they're all in Duluth. And Margie had chosen which story from the Decameron that they were going to do. And I was like, severed head, yeah, sign me up, please. Like, where do I start? It's very funny and weird, and it's hard to describe, but I love the tone of it. Like, it manages to be dark and light at the same time, and it goes to some places that I think one might not expect in this context. And there's animation happening behind the live singers, and the artists have just done some really beautiful work. It's there's actually a tiny little snippet on YouTube on the Lyric Opera of the North channel where you can see the way that the different layers are happening, that they're being laid in. So you can see our behind the scenes process where they have the live singers, and then you sort of see the animation growing behind them. And it's coming together so wonderfully, and it's going to be so charming. Am I allowed to say that? If I do say so myself?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Say it.
Yeah, so it's 4 singers and piano and violin.
It's very exciting, and we talk about asynchronous performance. I believe there was equipment that was shipped between the singers. 2 of them are in the same place, but so there are 4 singers in 3 different locations. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah.
And
yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of equipment going around. I have been very fortunate during this pandemic time that I have various projects like this going on, but I have never been in charge of the technical aspects of any of the things I've had to write. I just give them to people and they make magic happen. I feel like someday that's going to come back to bite me in the butt, but I am so grateful that everybody is doing such a fantastic job putting this together, and it's really going to be quite something to see.
Well, we're all learning uh, every
Mhm.
day. Every day we're learning. I meant to say this at the top, but those of you who were with us for the performance, we had a little bit of a delay. The video hosting was not playing in HD, and we wanted to make sure you had a good video experience. So actually today we went to Plan B, and if you watch the performance, it was live streamed, and normally it would not have been, but we were able to live stream it in a higher quality than and resolve the issue for the other. So now the video of Part 2, March of the Women, is should be available and on demand. You can watch it at any time, including Part 1. We hope this week you'll watch Part 1 and Part 2, and tell your friends and neighbors, and encourage them to join us for Part 3. But the challenge with producing a whole new opera in this way has been really, really interesting, and actually we've discovered all kinds of new things. I think actually Resonance Works chapter, it also has not animation per se, but it has illustrations. Gilda's brother is an amazing professional illustrator who's worked for the New York Times and the Smithsonian and all these places. And so ours looks like a graphic novel. So I think Loons and Resonance Works actually are kind of similar. And you can see Loons chapter, which is called Everything Comes to a Head. And as she referred to, there is a severed head. There is a baritone who is a severed head. And Resonance Works chapter is called Sourdough, Rise Up. And you can take from that anything you could possibly imagine, and it will probably be a little bit true or a lot true. There'll be more there than you could possibly imagine. And we are in episode 4. The Decameron premieres on October 9. And it will also be on demand, but there will be some premiere night activities, and we hope that you'll join all the premiere nights. 4 Fridays in October, October 9, 16, 23rd, and 30th, and the Resonance Works chapter is on the 30th. There is a wraparound story for all of the chapters, which is written by the creators of the project, Peter Hilliard and Matt Barresi. And so if you only watch episode 4, you miss out on the story arc that's been happening from episode 1. So we really hope you'll watch from episode 1 and also get to see all of the work of our fantastic company partners from all over the country. It's been really a fantastic experience to work with all of these people. I think that let's just go around one more time. What is coming up for each of you? Well, Rachel, we know sort of what's coming up for for you. We're still in a weird time. Charlene, what's going on for you? You have some other musical activities happening. I think that's starting to happen again.
Yeah, I do. So, I sing with the Pittsburgh Camerata. So we're actually in the process of recording our Christmas concert now. It's amazing. Do everything so far in advance. So we're going to be finishing that up in the next couple weeks. And then I have a awesome little mini recital coming up, and then something with the Chamber or Chatham Baroque for their December concert. And then I have a recital that I'll be doing in the spring. So, keeping busy, but, it's a different way to do things that we normally, have had to do. So
people always complain about Christmas decorations in stores before Halloween, but now we actually have to record Christmas concerts before Halloween. So that's true. Well, we hope you'll keep our Resonance Works audience updated so that they can experience all the performances that you have with all the different organizations in the city. That would be wonderful. Laura, you're now back to teaching a lot, right?
Yes. I teach private voice lessons at a couple universities. It's all online, which feels safe, but not ideal, teaching voice lessons through a computer. But my students have really great attitudes about it, and we make it work. Unfortunately, most of the opera companies I work with have just postponed or canceled till question mark. So any auditions or potential gigs I had have been pushed to 21, 22, if that. So we're kind of waiting to see on those things, but I'm trying to motivate myself to do my own recording projects. But it's hard because, like Maria was saying, there's a learning curve because I'm not a recording engineer. So, but it's, yeah. So kind of doing my own thing, hoping maybe I'll do some virtual auditions now. I'm not sure how that's going to work in the future. Yeah, and teaching my college kiddos, they give me hope. They're very positive about all of this, so that's pleasant.
Well, that's good to hear too. I've been saying since the beginning that some of the people I feel for the most are folks that are finishing high school and who are in college, because that's can be such an intense time, and to not be able to really experience that the way you thought you would be able to, I think would be very challenging. I kind of imagine how I would feel, and I really empathize with everybody, who's in that time of life right now. But
yeah,
they're
much more flexible and
just
like go with the flow. I was like, I admire you.
Absolutely. Anna, what's coming up for you? You're still doing your thing at QED, but maybe.
Well, no, I've had a lot of virtual performances that are up on YouTube these days. Pittsburgh Festival Opera, singing the song "To the Moon" in a unicorn blow up with a little martini glass. That's a lot of fun. And another concert with a friend of mine, and just organizing all the voices and duets and trios from different places, and it's been a lot of fun, and there's a lot of stuff going, and I'm thinking of putting some music together for a recital. The learning curve is steep, but I've learned a lot, so keep it up, and still got the QED thing going, and there's that painting thing too. So
if you don't, the way to see your paintings is Instagram, right?
Instagram, yes, and A Singer Paints. I do have a website, asingerpaints.com.
You should check it out. You're like a painting a day now, right?
Right, through September, right? It's a challenge to paint a painting a day.
Well, they're fantastic, and I have to say,
Thank you.
my Anna Singer calendars from the last 3 years are prized possessions. So we love to see your art as well as hear your art. So
we have 2 paintings, Anna paintings, from the Gill household too. So we have a collection. We're starting one.
It's a good time. Maria, we get to see. We kind of know immediately what's in your future because we will see you next week. But anything on the horizon, artistically or not?
Well, I'm going to be returning to Resonance Works Pittsburgh in their fundraiser, which I will let you talk about because I'm not sure if we're talking about it yet or not. But there's a fundraiser coming up that I'll be singing in for that, doing some fun little snippets, and then after that, exactly like what Lauren said, all of my 2020 gigs were either canceled or postponed. So hopefully in 2021, I will be returning to Resonance Works to sing Rosa and I'm a Dreamer Who No Longer Dreams. I also was contracted for another one of Cerise's operas called Monkey, and that was going to premiere in 2021 as the world premiere. So hopefully that will still be happening, but only time will tell. I have a Mozart Requiem coming up in 2021. Again, only time will tell. So there are a lot of things that are kind of up in the air right now, but I recently started my own business. So that's been keeping me very busy. I started a business as a Reiki practitioner, and I give distance Reiki to people all over the world. I have people booking sessions all the time, and it's great. For some reason, I have a random following in Australia of clients. So I'm like constantly up at weird hours of the night giving Reiki to people in Australia, but it's awesome. So I love doing the healing work, and that's really fulfilling me right now, and giving me that hope to hold on to. See what I did
That's
there?
great. Yes, indeed. Indeed. We see. Well, what Maria is referring to, which she doesn't realize, that except for Rachel the composer, all of the singers that are here are also a part of the upcoming, long-awaited, still awaited Verdi by Vegetables benefit, which is taking on a new form. It has a life of its own now, I have to say. It's like a major motion picture, really. And we say coming in, Christmas 2020. Well, we don't think it'll be Christmas, but we're eyeing up November, so we'll see. We'll see how that works. But the vegetables have been filmed. I'm here to tell you, the vegetables have been filmed. I had a zucchini dressed as Verdi in my refrigerator for an extensive period of time. And if that intrigues you, we'll just leave it at that. And thank everybody for joining us this evening, and for the many people who will watch this after the fact. That's one thing about all of this being on demand. These programs will be available for 3 months, and as soon as this chat is over, this video will go up on the website too. So anybody who watches the program can enjoy this wonderful chat with these amazing women once again. So I want to thank everybody. Thank you all for joining us, Maria, Anna, Laura, Rachel, and Charlene. It's such a pleasure. I'm so grateful to all of you for being a part of this event and this series, and I look forward to many more opportunities to make music together, maybe slightly less distanced, but we look forward to that. Thank you, everybody, and have a good evening.
Thank you.